It started 9 years ago when a doctor and a machine learning expert met up and said there's a better way of doing healthcare. And the core belief of that was with really high quality patient data and the next level amazing AI, such as reinforcement learning, we could do something really impressive.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Future Fuzz, a digital marketing podcast with a B2B slant. Today I'm joined with Darius, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at OWKIN, an Agentic AI company ranked as a top 50 AI companies by Forbes and Sequoia Capital. OWKIN is on a mission to solve complex biology and speed up and scale up research to create new treatments and diagnostics for patients. He has nearly 2 decades of experience leading marketing and innovation projects. The first half of his career spanned market research, advertising, and brand strategy for brands like GSK, Bayer, Unilever, and Coca-Cola. Darius, welcome on to the show today.
Hey, Justin.
So you're working in a very exciting space, and I do understand you've worked in the health space for quite a while now. What solutions is OWKIN providing in particular? Just tell us about the story of OWKIN.
Yeah, so OWKIN's a super interesting story. It started 9 years ago when a doctor and a machine learning expert met up and said there's a better way of doing healthcare. And the core belief of that was with really high quality patient data and the next level amazing AI, such as reinforcement learning, we could do something really impressive. And what OWKIN started off with is saying, let's start with one modality of data. So in this instance, it's histology slides. So if you have cancer, they take a biopsy of your cancer, they put it onto a glass slide, and then that's typically what pathologists look at, and that's kind of visualizing your cancer. So with the amazing abilities of machine vision learning and computers, you can now obviously blow that image up into a very high resolution image. And then that's the perfect training set for AI to start doing multiple things. So one of the first things we did was to say, can we, by just knowing the patient's data, so their clinical data, and by seeing their histology slide, can we start creating models that can actually predict some interesting outcomes? So things like, what is the risk of this patient relapsing? What kind of cancer exactly does this patient have? Would this patient benefit from this particular type of treatment? So asking really juicy, very difficult questions that a human definitely can't answer, and then training AI on this vast data set of patient data and of these images. And very early on, we found that indeed AI is absolutely capable of doing this, and in fact is much better than humans at really deciphering these small, complex patterns and extrapolating it to a binary outcome. So that was very exciting for us. But since then, that was one modality. Since then, we've been on a journey towards multimodalism, where we don't just look at clinical data and H&E data, but we look across the whole spectrum of human healthcare data. So everything from what they call multi-omics, proteomics, and now the latest frontier for cancer research is spatial omics. So it's kind of a spatially resolved way of seeing cancer cells on the cellular level. And then combining and threading all of these things together to really create value in 2 distinct buckets. So the first bucket is diagnostics. So how can we better diagnose patients? So how do we understand exactly what cancer they have, what they might respond to, and that really will help healthcare teams better match the patients with the ideal therapeutic. The second thing is actually those therapeutics themselves. So drug discovery today costs $10 billion on average. It takes between 13 and 15 years for a drug to come to market. So not the most efficient and effective, kind of thing in the world. But that's because biology is super complex.
Yeah.
So how do you break down some of that complexity and start creating therapeutics, i.e. some kind of drug that really works well on a particular patient population? And that's the second thing that we have really been focusing on, is how do we discover new drugs, but then also how do we develop them in a way that's smart and that's de-risked. So we, for example, have a phase 1 drug already. And a large part of that was due to our ability to understand the mechanism of action of that drug and identify exactly which patient population will most likely benefit from that drug.
So OWKIN is now 9 years old, and the company has obviously grown significantly in that time. And it started out with, for want of a better word, one model. And now obviously the services and products that are offered have evolved. Just curious, from a marketing perspective, and also someone who's got a a master in science, right? You've got a master's in science that you studied. You got it at Oxford, and you've also studied at Harvard as well. How, from your perspective, do you take a fairly complicated product to fairly complicated customers? What have been your key learnings with the time that you spent there at OWKIN?
So I think there's kind of three key learnings in this. And the first is simplifying the science. So there's a real trick to understanding what are the 2 or 3 most exciting part of a new technology or a new product, and then packaging those up into a way that the existing customer base can understand it. Often you're dealing with technologies that are brand new. And one of the things you definitely don't want to do is make buyers, especially, feel like they don't know something or they're behind already. So you're kind of then meeting them midway. So this is often the place where you use metaphors. So like, it's like this for that, for example. So, that kind of marketing tricks works really well because you want to take a buyer on a journey. You don't want them to be like, oh, I've never even heard of this, because that automatically won't make them want to buy it. So you want to meet them halfway and say, well, this existing paradigm, well, our AI solution does the same thing, but just in a slightly different way, for example. So I think really meeting people where they are at is very important. The second thing is, we live now in a more visual world than ever. So visual content is just the de rigueur. It's just the thing you have to do. So we've spent a lot of time and energy on video content. So it's short 2-minute videos that really explain the science. So it visualizes the science, whether that's drug discovery or AI, and it shows the potential buyer exactly how it works. So I think visual is critical. And then the third thing is smart segmentation. So really understanding who your buyers are, who are influencers into the buying process, who are the real buyers. For us, it really is biotechnology companies and pharma companies who buy both our software and our solutions. And they are incredibly complex organizations with very difficult sales journeys. Sometimes, you have sales journeys that can take 2 to 3 years. It's really about human connection. So a combination of digital, in-person, email, you have to really think 360 with these buyers because the sales cycles are so long. You'll see them at a conference one day and you have to land a point. So your conference, for example, something as simple as your conference booth and your conference material, these look really chic. Then the next time they'll see a video of your science on LinkedIn. That has to look really good. They might visit your website and try a demo. Then they might meet and they'll engage with your sales team. So their deck needs to look really great. So really, I would say in an average sales cycle, we might have 10 to 20 contact points with any given customer before they sign on the dotted line or before they buy our services or products. So you really have to be buttoned down across all those different points to land the deal in the end.
Great. I mean, a sales cycle of 3 years is pretty long, right? I think the average across the studies that we've seen, the average across the board is 211 days.
Wow.
So
with Pharma, it's much harder. I think a couple of reasons. I think the first is the ticket size is relatively larger. The second thing is just the complexity of the work that they do. Like any solution, you're going to have to go through multiple different teams. So yes, it's the executive sponsors who hold the budget who has to see value in the product or in the service. But more than that, you then have the technical teams that would actually use it on a day-to-day basis. They have to trial it. They have to make sure that they are happy with it. And then, of course, with pharma, because it's so highly regulated, there's compliance teams, there's data privacy teams, etc. So there's you have to run the whole gamut of impressing everyone along the value chain before you get the deal.
Great stuff. I've had friends that have worked for Johnson & Johnson in the past, and they're talking to me about the complexity of decision-making processes and how many people are involved. And I really like that comment about having the 360 approach, right? So you say you're taking a 360 approach within marketing, which massively supports the sales and accounts teams as well, right?
Of course.
And also video is key. I think a lot of people forget about video, or they don't take it seriously enough, or they say we haven't got time to do it. But you do a lot of different videos as well. Obviously, you have your, let's say, 2-minute explainers. Are there any other pieces of video content that you're doing?
Yeah, so there's two other kinds. I think the first kind is real product-based videos. So as a company, we have made the strategic shift to selling fewer AI solutions and more AI products.
Right.
And with products, there's a couple of things you can do. There's the classic sizzle reel, which is you do way before the product is even ready. So to build that demand generation. So I think that is super interesting, that whole demand generation space before the product actually even drops. How do you build anticipation? How do you drop one feature at a time for people to really get excited about the product before it even launches? How do you get a sign-up list to be thousands and thousands of people large before the product even goes live? The second thing, this is a bit more from an organizational perspective, is, we have a very charismatic founder. So you really want to use that charismatic founder to the maximum benefit. So there's these forward-facing, what does the future of healthcare look like in 5 years?
Right.
So we're using him for a lot of that kind of video content also. And then the last thing, which is a bit more around building an ecosystem and just some relatableness, because no one wants a brand to feel too polished, too slick all the time. So it's sometimes nice to also have some more realistic content in. And we're busy with a series at the moment where we interview different people in our business and say, well, what are you working on? What's really hard? What have we not cracked? What is something that, is the next frontier that's really difficult? And how are we tackling that challenge? And we find that kind of very relatable content, because these are challenges that our peers would feel, that academic institutions who help us with data will feel, certainly pharma companies would feel. So instead of this narrative of AI as all the answers, we kind of, there's humility to saying, we know what we don't know. And we find that exciting. We find that as a big challenge.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of fun as well, because you're engaging with your employees as well. And it also gives a feeling of employee advocacy too, and they feel engaged, and it could be a bit more fun, a bit more authentic, and a bit more realistic, right?
Exactly. And that way also you have like really super polished videos on the one side, but more authentic videos on the other side. So you're building a bit of a portfolio game. So people have different ways of looking at your brand. It's like looking through a prism. You see these different facets of any given brand.
You talked also about the 10 to 20 contact points, and I think this Google study is that there maybe on average, again, is like 17. So 10 to 20, would you say is like 10 to 20 different channels and mediums that you'd be using in a process, or that they engage with 20 different things?
I would say probably 20 different things, but then with digital, I would say it's probably a 80-20 split of digital versus real world.
Yeah.
And on the digital side, it can probably be even more, depending on how frequently. For example, if they follow you on LinkedIn, which we have a relatively robust following, I think we have about 60,000 followers now on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
A lot of them are obviously either current customers or potential customers. And we have a very robust content strategy where we post, I would say, probably twice a day. So we have a big content engine of content going out all the time. So if you count each of those kind of updates as a point, then you'd probably be in the 80 to 100 points over the 2 years. Things like newsletters also, a great way of sending a monthly update, the latest news. Open rates are relatively good, so you hit a large number of your audience multiple times throughout a year with that. Even something as simple as like a LinkedIn newsletter, that does incredibly well for us for some reason.
It does incredibly well. Yeah, I was going to say, okay.
Yeah, we have a very big following on it, and looking at the metrics, it seems like it's a real interesting place where people engage with it. Far more than our traditional email newsletter, actually.
Yeah.
So a lot more people read the LinkedIn newsletter than the ones that end up in their inbox.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe because our inboxes are being flooded with too many emails and work emails. I
tell you, email marketing is a tough one these days. It's just the amount of emails all of us receive, and if it doesn't capture your attention immediately, it's kind of in the bin. It's forgotten.
Yeah,
email marketing is going through a tough stage right now, I'd say.
Yeah, you've got to have an amazing hook, haven't you? And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've certainly noticed that it comes in waves. So I won't get anything for 2 weeks, and then maybe something changes somewhere, or someone has a system update, and then I'll get 20 come in what feels like 2 days. Have you noticed that at all?
For me, I feel like I get tons just every day. It never stops.
Yeah.
but yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think there's definitely probably there's a degree of which there's probably databases and some kind of tool where it it updates on a cyclical basis, and when it updates, you in that database, and then suddenly you get all the emails.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, I'm sure that there's someone tweaking a few buttons somewhere. And Google and Yahoo changed the rules in February 2024, I believe, which had a huge impact. And then you saw it tail off, and then it regenerates and it comes back on again. But the LinkedIn newsletter, that's a good one, because I can see how that actually has an impact. And of all the features that LinkedIn have, let's say, pushed, in inverted commas over the last couple of years, that does seem to be like one that's resonated. They tried the video thing. There is more video, but this is actually useful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you kind of follow the best practices of like keeping it short, sharp, like 3 biggest things that happened this month at OWKIN, it works a treat.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Yeah, really cool. You said your founder is very charismatic. So what are your thoughts on diving into LinkedIn in particular? What are your thoughts on having the charismatic founder as the front of the business on a channel like LinkedIn, as opposed to doing it through a company page?
He definitely is. So at OWKIN, we kind of balance both things, because I think for us, we do need both. So he's a doctor himself. He's an oncologist. So he gives a lot of credibility. He can talk to challenges in healthcare systems and healthcare data in a way that's A, very authentic, B, obviously very knowledgeable. He is a bit of an agent provocateur. He is quite provocative in some of his takes. So that's useful for starting conversations and pushing agendas forward. Whereas, of course, as a brand, we need to be a little bit more buttoned up. So I think, in essence, he can say things that the brand couldn't necessarily.
Have you got some examples of that?
Yeah, so he's very vocal about healthcare systems in particular, because he was a doctor in the US, he was a doctor in France, so he understands the complexities of healthcare systems. So he could, an example would be is he can criticize the way that procurement, for example, works in hospital systems. So he can say there's way too many layers, way too many people have to sign off on it. What it essentially means is you don't get the latest technologies, your patients suffer, your processes don't improve in time. Of course, do we balance that with patient safety? Always. But is there a faster route to getting new AI innovation into hospitals to serve doctors and patients? He also believes that. So he can say that, whereas, if as a company, as a brand, we were to say that, we would have to rely on defensible statistics, market reports and things like that to pull data from, where he can just pull from his personal experience. He can just say, when I was a doctor, this is how it worked, and this was very frustrating. So he can be, maybe a bit more grounded in his personal lived experience, whereas if a brand had to say the same things, we'd have to make sure that we are, we have firm sources. And of course, we really rely on our academic partners for data access. So we want to make sure we build really strong relationship with them. But sometimes, his point of view is, he wants to be a bit provocative and say, hey, we can do things better.
Yeah, I think if someone has the right intentions and they don't have such a huge ego, it's fine, right? And it's about having that balance.
Exactly. And it's about making the system better, and ultimately patients. Ultimately, whatever he says is for patient benefit.
Yeah, he's got the patient in mind. Yeah, that's key. There's many examples. No, I'm not mentioning any names, but there's many examples of business leaders and CEOs whose egos take over, and no matter what the company says, it's far too late.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention any names.
And sometimes with them, it's ideas for the sake of ideas, right? They want to give provocative, future-facing ideas. But often the answer, the question of to what end doesn't get answers by the technology. It's just technology for the sake of technology.
Yeah, indeed. What are you excited about for in the future? So the concept of Future Fuzz is like, it's also about looking forward, a bit more future thinking. I'm going to ask you in particular about hyper personalization, and we've had this come up on the show a few times before. Are you implementing hyper personalization in your marketing activities right now? Is it something you're going to do? Is it something you think that doesn't really work? Can you scale it? What are your thoughts around it?
Yeah, so it would be really amiss if I worked for an agentic AI company. I didn't mention agentic AI's, influence in this. So I think what we're doing today certainly isn't agentic yet, but I think it will very soon be agentic. But for me, personalization in the future really is going to be about the smart selection of your selling points, whether that's product features, whether that's the customer's problem, whatever it might be. It's a smart selection of what that might look like, tailoring that to exactly the right audience. So there's a personalization. But more than that, then it's serving that insight or that feature in exactly the right format, in exactly the right channel. So for example, if I knew that a particular kind of buyer, their biggest pain point is, say, productivity of their R&D team. So they say, my R&D team is great. They do wonderful science, but I just would like them to be double as productive as they are currently. And I know I have a software tool that can help them do that. So if I've identified this product of this person really wants to boost productivity in the R&D teams, if I take that then and say, okay, my product will boost their productivity by doing A, B, and C, knowing that's the kind of messaging that would resonate with him or her, and then saying, and the best way to show them these three things is in a short 40-second video that just quickly explains these three things. And the place where we're most likely to hit them is going to be, say, on LinkedIn or at a particular conference.
Right.
So it's sponsoring that conference, getting in on that LinkedIn channel. So you're matching the problem with the solution in the right channel, in the right format. So if you can align those four things, I think that's going to be absolutely amazing.
But do you think it could be done at scale, though?
Depends on how big your market is.
Yeah.
Depends on how big your market is. So the one of the nice things about, well, the nice and the challenging part of selling into biotechs and pharma is there's not that many of them. There's like 20 very big pharmas.
Right.
On the biotech side, there's obviously a lot more. There's thousands of biotechs.
And the biotechs are like the laboratory-based businesses. What's a biotech?
So a biotech is essentially just a baby pharmaceutical company. So they have a much smaller pipeline. They focus on maybe a couple of therapeutic areas or a couple of mechanisms of actions or a particular type of new technology. And obviously they're a bit more on the technology side than on the large clinical trial side.
Yeah.
Although they all do clinical trials to prove that whatever product they're developing obviously does work in humans and is FDA regulated.
Yeah.
So your question is, do you think this can work at scale? I think you'd have to obviously do experimentation. So you test it on, say, 50 customers that you know very well. And then if it works on those first 50 customers, you try and expand it to your next 200 customers. And I think as the data kind of runs out for how well you know your customers, the campaigns will be less and less effective. But I know for a fact that within our CRM systems and within people that we've engaged with for the last 9 years, we have a very rich data pool of those people. So I would say from a marketing perspective, we, the marketing team at OWKIN, know maybe 500 organizations, customers, people buying incredibly well from all of our analysis. So for those people, we can absolutely do this. But then there's a much larger pool of, say, another 5,000 that we know so-so. We don't have that much data on them. It's not that rich. So this kind of approach would not always work with them. And then there's probably a much larger pool of, say, 10,000 people who we just don't know yet. And it'll be very hard to do this kind of campaign for them.
And for the larger group, it's about providing them value, educating them, bringing them in so you can learn more about them.
You should learn more about them. Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of feedback loop so you can at least know, okay, they opened up an email or they clicked on this particular link or they watched this kind of video. So maybe they're interested in this kind of thing.
It does feel like some companies are basically starting the wrong way round. Like they're trying to get 10,000 people personalized, engaged with too early on, whereas they should be focusing on the, like, it sounds like grading of data, isn't it? It's like a customer group. Yep. And in a way, it's a pyramid. These are the 10,000 at the bottom. Let's just draw them in with content and providing useful information so that they engage. Right.
Yes.
And then you got your mid cohort, and then you got your, the top of the pyramid, which is the people that you know a lot about.
Yeah.
And then over time, that it can grow from there, can't it?
Exactly. I mean, the idea is that it kind of starts off with a pyramid, but then it goes that way. So you have more and more people that you know more and more about over time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great. Okay. And then is there any particular, let's say, channels, or let's go back to something you said before. So you would say it's kind of like an 80-20 split in terms of digital consumption of information, and then to maybe I would thinking like 20% is probably then the events or something in person. Yep. Any particular channel where you've seen the most success, and any particular thing to do in an in-person event that seems to bring about, really good results?
So I'm going to start with the second question. So things that really work in person. So our kind of customer, the place where we meet them often is these big events. So it's normally big cancer conferences or big scientific conferences. And when I say big, I'm talking 60 to 80,000 people.
Wow.
It's normally in the US, super crowded. So I think there's two things. I think the first is it's very boring, but like stand and booth design really needs to be super eye-catching. So colorful graphics, really big. Demos is a must-have. Like there's no point in just talking about your technology. If you really have something great, have a demo, show them, get them to sit down and actually start using the product. Especially with Agentic AI, with LLMs, they can literally enter in a question and query something and get an interesting answer back in seconds. So a strong demo.
A live demo at the booth.
Yes. On their problems. So it's not a stage demo where you're like, let me take you through a mock workflow. It's, hey, put your problem in and see how our LLM reasons through it. So that we saw great results within the last year. The other thing is have a little handy guide. So we have these series of booklets, which is really useful. So the one booklet is all about the A to Z of AI terminology in healthcare. So our audience is very broad. And as I said, no one likes to think of themselves as someone who can't keep up or don't know the latest technology. So this was a thin little illustrated book, super colorful, very fun. And each letter has a different word. So A is for agentic, B is for bias, C is for whatever. And essentially this little booklet is a way to make the whole industry smarter about AI.
Yeah.
And we actually had people come to our stand to say, a colleague of mine picked up this booklet. I love it. Can I have one too?
Oh, so brilliant.
It's a smart giveaway that people can read on the plane on the way back home. It's thin, it's to be shoved into a pocket, but it's also really beautifully designed.
Yeah.
So we had custom animation, illustration going into it. Really well considered, really well written.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, we literally had people come up to our stand and say, hey, my colleague got it and they said I need to come pick up one from this booth. And that doesn't really happen. When you have 60,000 people don't often come back to a stand. So that was cool.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. All right. It might be. Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes, I mean, I hate to admit this, but people are very fickle also. Like a little gimmick goes a long way. So at the last big conference we had, we gave away little plushies and it was in a claw machine. And the plushies was obviously of different biological kind of things. So it was a T cell, it was an immune cell, it was mRNA. And one of the big insights is so many people go to these conferences and their parents, and they need to bring something back for their kid.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So we had people queuing around the corners of this conference venue, just trying to win a little mRNA plushie toy for their child. And of course, the great thing is, in the 2 or 3 minutes it takes them to actually operate the claw machine and getting it, you're talking to them about the product, you're getting their email address, you're understanding what kind of companies they work for, what they're looking for in a product. So you're actually using that time as a exploration and getting a lot of data, rich data on these potential customers. So
that's correct.
A gimmick goes a long way sometimes.
Yeah, know your audience. I heard an absolutely brilliant one where they had a booth that was covered in flowers and plants and on a wall, but they were all held in flower pots, but they were set up in a really nice way, so the whole booth was just covered and very standout, very green, and it looked cool. And then at the end they were like, right, like coming towards the end of the conference, well, these plants all need to go, so take one with you. And then word came around and said, oh, I'd like a little plant for my desk, and the plant pot was branded.
Yeah, genius.
Nothing gets thrown away, right? Nothing gets thrown away. Yeah, it's very, very smart. Yeah,
that's very smart.
It's been brilliant talking to you, Darius. I feel like I talked to you for hours. It's like preaching to the converted here.
Amazing.
Where can people find you?
So being in the industry I'm in, I think LinkedIn is probably the best. So it's just search for Darius Meadon on LinkedIn.
Amazing. And you can also visit OWKIN, and I'm sure OWKIN will be at many events, and also check out the video content as well. Darius, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.